I got started with Howard Fine in 2012. I was part of the first year of full-time students at Howard Fine. And in 2011, I was coming up on the end of my degree at Deakin University. I was doing an undergrad there in drama. So I was finishing up my degree and I was looking at what I wanted to study. Our degree, for the most part, was in theatre practitioner, as opposed to acting, straight acting. So we made a lot of theatre. We performed in a lot of theatre, but I knew that I didn't really have a technique under my belt. I had good instincts. I had a lot of experience, but I didn't have a solid technique that I could rely on. So I was looking at where I could study and how I could actually do that. If I wanted to pursue a full-time career as an actor, I needed to train as an actor, not just a practitioner, theatre practitioner. So I auditioned for NIDA and WAPA and Howard Fine. And then after auditioning for Howard Fine, I realized that that was my top pick. I was really excited to get in there and work, and it was the most supportive room that I felt that I had been in. And I was really excited for it. And then I got the call, and then I did it. And then I did the full-time program in 2012. Yeah, I remember being there. It was Patrick Constantino, and Stephen Costin was there in the room. And the other auditions that I'd had for some other drama schools felt very much Dance Monkey, Impress Us. And it was a very serious panel of these academics. And it was like, okay, let's see if you're good enough to work with us. There was this hoity-toity attitude. And then at the Howard Fine studio, it was Stephen and Pat, and they were so friendly. And it was like, hi, it's so nice to meet you. Come in. Let's just see what you've been working on. And then they gave me some redirects and they gave me some advice. And then we worked on it in the room. And I left feeling confident in what I'd done. Whereas with the other auditions, I'd left going, shit, I hope they like me. Was that good enough? I didn't feel any kind of support from the room. It was in 2013, I remember. So after I graduated the full-time program, I started coaching independently a little bit. I'd already been directing. I'd been directing when I was at Deakin University. So I'd had a lot of experience directing. And actually, while we were finishing the full-time course, I started producing a play, a double bill of one-act plays at Chapel Off Chapel. And I was directing one act that was starring Sarah Hallam and Vincent Andriano, both full-time grads. Sarah's now on the faculty as well. And so I directed them in one half, and then Sarah directed myself and Vincent in the other half, which was cool. It was amazing. So I was already directing, I was coaching, and I knew that this was a direction that I wanted to take my career. And so when Howard was in town for a masterclass, I asked him for a meeting, and he very generously obliged. And then we had a meeting, and I just said, hi, I've been coaching. I love coaching. I'm very good at it. I love your studio. I love your teaching. I want to work for you. And he said that the studio had been thinking about implementing a youth program and bringing somebody on for that. So they gave me the opportunity to front that. So I helped design that course and roll that out. And then from teaching that, I also started teaching some scene study and some adult classes as well. So many things. And I mean, I love the variety of it. And depending on what class it is, we're focusing on different things. So it's always fascinating to me, because not only are we exploring every inch of the human condition, but we're also looking at like the technical elements of craft, and like the storytelling is what I absolutely love. But my favorite thing about teaching, and I think this is why I resonate so much with Howard, is being of service and being able to help people, help actors. Nothing brings me more joy than being able to equip an actor with the skill to achieve what they want to achieve. And to see actors and artists work tirelessly for years and years and years start achieving their dreams, it just fills my heart up so much to know that I've been a part of that, that I could help them find happiness and success. I just love being of service and helping people do that. I loved my life in Melbourne. I loved it so much. So I was the co-artistic director of a theatre company north of 8 that was born out of the Howard Fine Studio. From my work with that company, I got a job at the National Theatre Drama School. And so I was spending every single day creating and working with artists and just making stuff. I loved my life in Melbourne, but I did see limitations in what I could pursue professionally at that time in that city. And I knew that if I was going to really push myself to achieve what I wanted to, I needed a change of environment. And so that's when I started looking and started exploring elsewhere. And then I realized that Canada has that youth exchange program where I think it was under 30, but now it's under 35. You can get a working holiday visa where you can work on an open work permit for 2 years. And I was approaching 30. And I was like, okay, it's really hard to get a green card for America, even an O1. It's going to be next to impossible for me to get the right visa to work in America. I think the way for me to work in the American industry without working in America is going to be through Canada. So it was a way for me to break into and start working in the American industry with what I could at the time. I suppose first and foremost, life-wise, at the start, everything is shiny and it's all so exciting. And I was like, wow, a red fire hydrant and a yellow school bus, just like you see in the movies. That's so cool. And everything has this nice little filter on it. I feel like I'm living in a postcard. Great. And then I've noticed this as a pattern, not just in myself, but in other expats that I work with or who are my friends. Around the 3-month mark, you start to grieve your old life and it becomes incredibly lonely. And of course, there are ways that you can move through that, but it's something that I wasn't expecting. It was that, okay, even if I do go back home, it's never going to be how it was. And so it's a matter of grieving what I thought my life was going to be so that I could then step into what my life was becoming with no idea of what that was going to be. And then the immigration process is so hard and finding work here. I was very fortunate that I found some work. Basically, as soon as I landed, I had a friend that was working in casting here. And because I had my own studio, they needed someone to run the studio. So in stepped me, and it was very serendipitous and I was very fortunate. But there weren't that many hours and the money wasn't great. Getting all the life stuff set up was like the biggest thing. I think sometimes people see that fairy tale, arriving in New York City and getting off the bus singing and walking onto a Broadway stage. It's not like that. It's really hard. And I think first and foremost, I had to get my life sorted before I could get my work in order. Well, work-wise, career-wise, I found the hardest thing moving into a different market was that my skill set followed me, but my reputation didn't. I was very good at what I did and I got consistent work. None of that followed me over here. There was no reputation as well, because there's a small industry in Melbourne. So everybody knows everybody and it's very easy to build your reputation. I didn't have to fight too hard for opportunities within my circle. And then coming here, nobody knew me. And so I became an absolute nobody and had to start from scratch, which was really good. And I'm actually really glad that that happened. It was really great lessons in ego. It was a great lesson in going, okay, I can't tell people that I'm good. I have to show people that I'm good. And I can't just do that once. I need to do that consistently. And it's going to take much longer for me to build my reputation here in the city than I thought. But it was that wake up call that just because you move to a new market that might have a bigger industry doesn't mean that you've got the golden ticket and that you're going to step into opportunity or you're going to step into work immediately. So that was the hardest thing, was adapting to being an absolute nobody and needing to build relationships from the ground up. It was really hard. My work permit expired right at the end of 2020. And so this is actually something I wanted to talk about in this interview today, was that I had to take a 2-year break from being an actor. And that's part of my story with immigrating. Um, and I was just getting some really good momentum right when we were coming up to that. Literally the week before my visa ran out, I booked 3 jobs. And then fortunately I got to do them before the visa ran out. But then I was like, I was getting really good momentum. And then I was like, okay, cool. The visa's run out. I was applying for permanent residency. And then that fell through a year later. So I got sponsored by the studio that I was teaching at. And so that allowed me to stay in the country, but I could only work as a coach, as an acting teacher. While my other application for permanent residency was being processed. And that took another year from there. So I did have to take a big step back from being in front of camera to focus solely on education. Which I'm actually incredibly grateful for. And I think it's the best thing I possibly could have done for my career at that time. Vancouver had a really great boom during COVID because the border was closed to America. And so all of the local productions that would usually fly in Americans to play the leads and the supporting leads now had to cast local if they wanted to go to camera. And so big opportunities presented themselves for local actors here. And I saw a lot of my colleagues and my students got great success out of that boom. And their careers jumped really quickly because they were going from large principal roles, guest star roles, to becoming series regulars or recurring guest stars, where they may not have had that opportunity had the borders been open. I was actually glad that I wasn't a part of that, and that I could maintain that view of gratitude and reflection, and having the opportunity to breathe and just take that time while the world was burning, not feeling like I had to strangle something and go nuts. So I should, make sure that everybody listening knows that a big part of my journey was that I couldn't literally be an actor or be employed as an actor while I was here. The biggest difference for me between Melbourne and Vancouver is that in Melbourne, there's not a huge thriving film scene, film and television. There's some projects going on. There's a couple of TV shows that are filming. Maybe a couple of big feature films will come, at least when I was there. That might have changed now, but it wasn't thriving. It wasn't like we had a million different possibilities of what we want to work on, or where we want to focus our attention. It was like it was announced that one thing was coming to town, and every actor went, "Oh my gosh, we have a project. I got to work on that." There wasn't that huge screen world there, but what there is in Melbourne is an incredible theatre scene, and an incredible theatre culture, and a culture that values live performance. And I think that that's been born out of a lack of a screen industry, out of necessity. Maybe out of necessity. I also think because of that lack of a paycheck from network television, it's created this incredible indie scene where every artist that I know that lives in Melbourne either makes their own work or works in the indie scene, because we have to. We're kind of forced to do it, but then it becomes this beast that's almost self-sustaining, and it's fulfilling, and it's this incredible community of people that just make things because they love making things. And it's like North of Eight Theatre Company. We were just making indie theatre because we love theatre. We didn't have the end goal of getting on the main stage at MTC. Of course, we'd all love it, but like we weren't trying to sell the shows that we were making. We were just making them because we loved them. We wanted to expand the company so that we could expand our audience, yes, but we were doing it for the love. We couldn't not work. Now, the downside to that is that you can't really survive off of it. I don't know many people who are able to survive off the industry, off being an artist in Melbourne, because these indie projects either don't pay anything or they're profit share or it's a small honorarium, just as a token of appreciation and respect. But you can't spend a week on set in Melbourne and then pay your mortgage with it because no one has that money. Someone might pay for your gas and give you lunch every day, but you can't really make a living off of your art while you're there. But you can create an awful lot of it. It's amazing. Whereas Vancouver, the scene that I'm in now, this market, there's an incredible film and television scene here. And there's so much television and there's so much film that the entire industry is for network television. And it's a beast, and it's this service industry to America. And there's incredible, incredible opportunity. And there's incredible opportunity for money. And a lot of people live very comfortably off of their TV work here. But the flip side of that is that there's not much of a culture for indie work here, because it's really hard to create things here when there's so much shinier opportunity, or when you've got union film crews that are being employed and paid to work on The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina or The Good Doctor or whatever else is here. They don't want to give up their Saturday, Sunday for no money to make something for the love of it, because they don't need to. And there's a very small scene here, and there are little pockets of it, but it's not a thriving culture. It's not the underground that Melbourne has. And likewise as well, the theatre scene in this city really suffers because of the screen opportunity. Purely because people don't want to turn down work in amazing network television to do an indie season of a John Patrick Shanley play for 2 weeks that they might get paid $200 for 4 months of work. It's like people don't want to give up their opportunity for that. I think the unique opportunities here is that there's much more genre-based work, and there's a much larger group of networks that we get to play with. And in Australia, at least when I left, there wasn't a lot of genre work. I know ABC was just starting to play with some sci-fi stuff with Glitch and like a little bit of like some sci-fi thriller stuff. But for the most part, the work that was being produced in Australia was a kitchen sink drama. And it was pretty grounded, pretty natural. It was a family navigating the trials of life. There wasn't so much genre stuff. And so that was also another big thing that I really had to work on and learn about. Fortunately, working in casting, I got a masterclass and firsthand experience seeing it all. But things like recognizing that different networks have different styles of storytelling, and different genres have different styles of storytelling, and learning how to create a motivated, fully substantiated human being or character in these worlds. And of course, using Howard's teachings and Hagen's teachings, it's all motivated. It's all motivated. You can't fall into the how of playing style. but you do need to be aware of the show that you're working on or the network that you're working on. And I call it professional awareness, and allowing that knowledge to influence your choices and the way that you shape these characters, so that it's not playing a style, it's you're simply living by the rules of the universe that this character inhabits. Research the market that you are looking to move into. And that's going to be so different if you're looking at London, if you're looking at LA, New York, Vancouver, Toronto versus Atlanta or Chicago or wherever, whichever market that you're looking at moving into. Do your research as to the life that you want to be living, and if that market is conducive to that life. Because first and foremost, health needs to be your biggest priority, including mental health there. And if the culture of that city is not something that's going to fill up your cup, you're going to be miserable the whole time. So I say first and foremost, research that. But then you got to do your market research. Have a look at what kind of work is being produced in that city. And is that work that you want to be doing? Different cities have different specialties, have different things. And then if that's the case, get really specific with what skill sets are required for that kind of work. If there's a dialect that you've got to master to be able to work in that market, master it before you even come here. You've got to, if you want to get decent rep, and I know sometimes like a lot of rep take a chance on new immigrants, but then it's a bit of an uphill battle because you've got to convince them to trust you with a dialect that's not perfect. I would then also look at the union rules and what you need to be able to work in that market. And it's different in all different markets. But first and foremost, you need a work permit and a visa so that you can. There's no chance of anybody hiring you if you can't legally be employed. And then union rules as well, because you might find that you can't join the union until you become a permanent resident or get a green card. And if you can't join the union, can you work, or can you only work on non-union productions? And if that's the case, what's the non-union world in that city? Is there a lot of non-union work? Here in Vancouver, there's not much because it's a service industry for American network television. Not much non-union work. There's a lot of non-union commercials, some non-union independent films, but not much. And they've just stiffened the union rules. So it's incredibly hard to work in the city if you're not union. Not impossible. It's not impossible. There is work. But you need to recognize that there might be another market that you could play in that would have looser rules that would allow you to get credits to then join the union, to then perhaps move into a market that you have those credits for. That'd be the big things. I think again, it comes down to which market they're looking at. I would suggest having a look at acting studios or acting coaches, and you could always start from there. I bet you could join a class online, or at least book in for a private coaching or a consultation or a career mentorship session with somebody in that market that you're looking at. Even better, if you already know somebody living there, you can ask them for recommendations. It helps to have friends, not just for industry referrals, but also just to show you around and like, where are the good noodles and where's the best place to live, or where are the dangerous areas of town, or where's the good public transit that you want to live near, or all of those things. But in terms of industry, I would suggest look for a coach that's reputable in that city and book a private coaching, because they'll know everything. They'll be able to give you a list of agencies that operate in that market that you can look at. They'll have some classes that they can recommend to you, because class creates community. It's an instant way to make friends, which is so important. But it's also a way of learning what's the way of the land there. What's the way of the land? What are people working on? What are people bringing into class? What kind of stuff is here? And then from there, once you've got an acting class and a little acting community, then the possibilities are endless, because then you've got a bunch of people you trust that you can ask for headshots and agencies and all of the business stuff that you need to get started. You really need somebody with skin in the game that you can trust. Because Google is great, but it's not accurate, because people can manipulate their websites and their Google reviews and all of that. Sometimes take a stab. You just kind of have to if you don't know anything. You could look around until you find something that feels right. It's kind of like therapy. Try a few on and then see where you land. But really, if you got someone in that town that you trust, ask their advice and they'll point you to the right places. I was really inspired, to have the freedom to be doing my own work. I was working for another studio here that I respect and that I'm really grateful for. It allowed me to find community, and it allowed me to stay here, and they gave me a work permit. Like, I wouldn't be here without them. I'm incredibly grateful. But the teachings at that studio weren't quite aligned with my teachings and my background and where I've come from. So I was looking for a space where I could have the freedom to do that. Also, I really wanted to create a space that could be a pillar of community that isn't so existent here. What we've talked about, the indie scene not thriving so much. I wanted to create a space where we can foster artists creating for the sake of creating, and really like help shift the culture of this city through doing that. I also wanted to create a studio that holds actors to the standards of excellence, which there are little pockets of that in the city, but it's not very common. I have a lot that I can offer to this city, and it's baby steps, but I'm getting there and fostering this culture of hard work and reward from process, not booking. I'm so glad you asked. It's my favorite word in the whole world, and it's a made-up word by a German website called the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. And they create definitions and words for feelings that people can't quite describe, or feelings that don't have definitions just yet. So Sonder is the sudden realization that each random passerby that you encounter has a life as vivid and complex as your own. I love it. And I think it's really at the core of what we do as actors, in that we need to study the art of empathy. And that's realizing that everybody has a life and everybody has feelings and needs and wants and desires and dislikes and relationship. I just love all of that. It's my favorite part about this work is the world building and the character building. So when I learned the definition of that word, I was like, oh, well, that's it. That's my craft in one word.